I use Vite.
You do use Vite. Good for you. You are a smart person.
But I just run the command and I don't know what happens because it comes with like the framework and it's just the front end stack. But I use it. Hey everyone, here we are again. I was joined by Paul last week to talk about Python's type system. And today we're talking about something, well, I have no idea actually what we're talking about. Paul, help me out here. What's going on?
Web front ends, full stack development. Brent, you're in the world of PHP. I'm in the world of Python, but also in the world of the web. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these, I describe Python as a three-legged stool, full stack web, data science, and everything else. Mm-hmm. And full stack has come to mean, maybe unfortunately, that Python's backend sends JSON to a JavaScript front end, such as React.
Yeah.
And what that means is if you're a PHP backend developer, maybe you've had to learn a little bit of JavaScript.
Yeah.
And the challenge is that the part that your business owners value is the pixels on the screen. They may not fully appreciate the beauty of that innermost loop you wrote in PHP.
Yeah.
And so the UI is over there in this JavaScript thingy. And if you believe in testing, what does that mean? Because if that's where the business value is, that's where you should have an emphasis on test coverage. What does front-end testing mean? And that's what we can talk about today.
Okay, cool. Let me just answer that question from my point of view, and I think you're going to laugh at me, but front-end testing for me means like booting up a Selenium driver, which is, do you know it? Which is running Chrome in the background and sending commands to it that will press buttons and then take screenshots kind of, and just assert that things work. It's very high level and it's very slow basically.
End-to-end testing is definitely the right thing to do if you hate JavaScript.
Okay, I'm on the right path then.
If you believe in unit testing, if you believe in integration testing, and you're saying to yourself, but I don't want to learn JavaScript, so I'll just do end-to-end testing. This little live stream recording is for you. We will talk about, it's actually kind of cool what's going on over there. Okay. And we in Python and we in PHP could learn a lot from this fourth generation of unit testing in front ends.
Cool. Well, go ahead. Convince me.
All right, sure. We touched on it a little bit in last week's video. You know, why did TypeScript take off? Part of it was because that poor world of abused toys had gotten used to transpiling.
Yeah.
They got used to running their code through tools that would generate the code that actually got executed. Yeah. And so then they smuggled things on top of that. Bundlers and code splitters and compilers for like TypeScript. Into that world kind of arrived a series of new thinking about unit testing and integration testing. One of the first down the block was just a port of JUnit from the world of Java to just do that kind of testing. You import a JavaScript file in a browser usually, and you go to a web page, and the web page runs all your scripts and gives you some output about that.
Okay.
But that's kind of far away from your tool, from your IDE.
Yeah.
So then there became ideas like Mocha, which had much more of a thorough test framework approach. They could be integrated into tools, and you run your tests in your tool and get output in your tool and stuff like that. With the emergence of Node.js, a JavaScript engine, which wasn't in a browser.
Yeah.
Then things began to change. You didn't think necessarily of writing your code to execute in a browser. You didn't think necessarily of executing your tests in a browser.
Yeah.
You had a headless JavaScript in your IDE, and you did all of your development in there. Even if you weren't deploying to Node.js, you developed in Node.js.
Okay.
And you consumed tooling written in JavaScript that executed under Node.js. You would consume a linter like ESLint that's written in JavaScript Node.js. You would consume a formatter like Prettier that's written in JavaScript for Node.js. And you would consume a unit test framework and a test runner written in JavaScript for Node.js. For example, Mocha. But then, for me at least, the big revelation was when Angular arrived with kind of a vertically integrated testing concept.
Okay.
I'm not going to say the name on this recording. The original name of Angular's test runner is just the epitome of the bro style programmer, the brogrammer.
Okay.
They renamed it to Karma. And so I'll just say Karma.
Okay.
And Karma has ideas about unit tests, integration tests, not necessarily, maybe end-to-end tests. But Karma had this idea of pluggable engines to execute in, including Chrome headless. So a browser didn't actually pop up, and it really felt like a seamless experience.
Yeah.
And with that, Angular developers started to kind of get conditioned to write tests.
Yeah.
And the framework developers themselves shipped all of these helpers to give you a test sandbox where everything was already wired up to make it really convenient to do testing. And so, at least for me, that was when I really started doing testing. Now, React then showed up and ate the world.
Yeah.
The React folks adopted or came up with a test framework called Jest.
Yeah. I actually know about that.
Okay.
Because there's a PHP test. There used to be only one big testing framework called PHP Unit. And then a couple of years ago, someone said we need something better. And they started to make Pest, which was inspired by Jest, but for PHP. And I actually did a live stream with the creator just a couple of weeks ago. I'll leave a link in the description if people want to check that out.
Fantastic. I'll pause here actually and ask you some questions about all of that. Okay. You said the first one was PHP Unit, right?
Yes, probably some other small ones, but the big one is still PHP Unit.
And safe to say, really good integration in PHP Storm?
Yeah.
For those that don't know, all of our IDEs share in the platform a lot of testing machinery.
Yeah.
And so you get this awesome UI to show you the results of your tests and all these buttons to filter and rerun just a single test and all this other stuff. It's fantastic. Is Pest supported?
Yeah, actually. That's why I did a live stream. There used to be a third-party plugin, but since it's growing quite a bit in size, we now taken ownership of that plugin, and we maintain it now as the PHP Storm team. And it's now bundled. Well, it's going to be. Well, by the time this goes live, it will be bundled in the latest PHP Storm release. Yeah.
That to me is a important part of all of this story is, you can have a test framework that runs over there, like in a terminal, or like you said last week in GitHub Actions.
far, far away.
Far away. But for people who believe in TDD, test-driven development, you want the immediate feedback, the red squiggle or the failed test or whatever. And so getting something a test framework that is popular enough that PHP Storm cares about it.
Yeah.
And it's nice if the community has a couple of choices, but not too many.
Yeah. Well, there are two, and then there's some higher level end-to-end testing frameworks and stuff like that.
JavaScript the world of JavaScript has gone through some phases where everyone wanted to have their own super cool, but very immature test framework.
Right. And
I think things are kind of consolidating a little bit.
Yeah, I think that sounds like JavaScript. I remember.
It does sound like JavaScript, yes. So with that in mind, Python has a little bit similar where there's one test framework to rule them all called PyTest. Great integration in the IDE, really good development experience. So for the web front end world, you're writing your React code and you're writing some tests and you're executing them in a test runner called Jest. Now, the thing that I freaking love, it's controversial.
Okay.
I mentioned about everything's executing in Node.js, not an actual browser engine.
Yeah.
In Jest, unlike in Karma, in Jest, they have a fake browser called JSDOM.
Oh, okay.
And they have a newer package called HappyDOM, which is faster. But JSDOM implements all of the DOM APIs in Node.js, and you don't run a browser. And so your tests run pretty fast.
Yeah.
And you don't have all these windows flashing on your screen for every single test and stuff like that.
Nice.
And if you want to kind of get into the flow with testing, it's just a wonderful ways to develop. Just highly encouraged. So for me, that was a big turning point. It really influenced the way I do. I don't say test-driven development because the purpose for me isn't quality. It's joy. I want to be in a joyful mode when I'm writing code. And I just find sitting in a test lets me stay in the IDE. I don't go to a browser. Everything's slow, under control. I feel safe. When there's a problem, I've got all the tools in the IDE at my fingertips. So if it's okay, we will switch to my screen.
Yeah. There we go.
And what I'll talk about is not Jest, but the next generation.
Okay.
VTest is a test framework written on something called Vite.
Yeah. I use Vite.
You do use Vite. Good for you. You are a smart person.
But I just run the command and I don't know what happens because it comes with like the framework and it's just the front end stack. But I use it.
Yeah. We talked about the world of JavaScript. We talked about JavaScript in the browsers. We talked about JavaScript in this thing called Node.js. And that a lot of the tooling for JavaScript is written in JavaScript and runs in Node.js. So when you're formatting your code, blah, blah, blah.
Oh.
Vite is actually written in Go.
Okay.
With these great Node.js bindings.
Yeah.
Which gives it super performance. Vite acts as a transpiler. It acts as a bundler, a code splitter, 57 kinds of things. I guess I should bring up Vite. At the recent VConf, they've got all this stuff where they're going to start looking at switching some things to Rust. But all of these hot module replacements, so you don't have to restart your program. All these kinds of things going on. So that's Vite. And so on top of Vite is this test framework that inherits some things from Vite, which make it badass. First, it's freaking fast. It's fast enough that you get right there with the as you type development. It can execute and fail basically as you type your code. So it's not this other thing that you do in GitHub Actions. It's not this other thing you do in pre-commit, etc. You're always on your path because it's just so fast. You might as well run it. And that mode changes your way of thinking because you're going through the implementation of something and your test is telling you, where you are in reaching your goal. Pretty cool. And if you work in small units, this is a great way to develop. VTest is fast because it has this Go aspect.
Yeah.
VTest, everyone, please listen, because this is really neat and it's nowhere on the radar in Python. VTest is also fast because it only reruns the tests that it needs to based on your change.
Oh.
How does it do that? Because Vite is a bundler.
Yeah.
And it knows the dependency graph of everything.
Yeah.
You change this code and it knows what code used it and then what tests were testing that code. And you may have 1,000 tests, but only 3 run because the function you're writing is only used in 3 places.
I'm just doing the mental exercise here of how that would work in PHP. And because we have like optional code insights that like scan for test coverage and stuff like that, you know, it exists, but it's so slow. So this wouldn't work for PHP, but it sounds, not yet, but this is mind blowing.
These things like Karma Jest and VTest, they do something that Python and PyTest don't do. They have a server mode that goes into watch mode. So you fire up the test runner and it's watching for changes. PyTest doesn't do that. One of the reasons that this is a thing in the world of JavaScript is because of bleeping transpiling and type scripting. That it's just so much to do to get your code ready to test that you got to keep this thing running around all the time. You got to jump through your butts to cache the transpilations of things and only retranspile things that matter. But once you have this server in watch mode and you know your dependencies, your days of 2-minute test runs are over.
Yeah. It's just, I'm a little speechless right now. And I'm trying to like gather my thoughts here because I feel that, you know, no matter how hard we mock JavaScript, it feels at least that it's so far ahead of so many other different ecosystems, and it can do that because it had to like go through some metamorphic phase the past 10-15 years. It had to because it sucked so much. And it's still kind of weird, and there are still 10,000 different frameworks, and we still laugh with it. But on the other hand, these are pretty great things that I, as a PHP developer, am very jealous of, actually.
That's a really good summary. And I think implicit in what you're saying is these innovations come from some of the tragedies.
Yeah, exactly.
They're born out of desperation. It feels a little bit like an X-Men. What's that character, Cyclops, with the eye?
With the eye,
you know, and JavaScript's got all of this energy inside, and sometimes it's destructive.
Well, but that's interesting because, like, JavaScript as a language itself is still it's a cool language, but there's nothing really, as far as I know, setting it apart from any other language. But it's like this ecosystem that has grown around it that's now part of JavaScript that's making it so powerful. Mm-hmm. And I mean, people are writing tools in other languages for JavaScript because it's just such a like amazing like target. I'm sorry, I'm gathering my thoughts here, but
and now you've got a couple of JavaScript runtimes that will compile to a standalone executable. Dino and Bun.
There used to be this talk by Gary Bernhardt. I don't know if you ever saw it. I'll leave a link in the description. And he said like it was called The Birth and Death of JavaScript, and he started in 1994 when JavaScript like conceived. And then he went to 2030 or something, and he ended with, and JavaScript is going to run everything from it. It's going to be run your kernel code. It's going to do everything, and it's all going to be embedded. And Yeah.
I think I mentioned in the previous recording about Python 3.13 is looking at getting a JIT. I think JavaScript has like 8 JITs. There's the amount of manpower, man-centuries of research that have gone into JavaScript are just astounding. How about I go ahead and show a little bit of this in action?
I was about to ask that. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So this is from our project called the JetBrains Guide. Yeah. It looks like React, but it's actually 11D with JSX and TypeScript and stuff. And so this is a component called a navbar. Mm-hmm. And these are the props that you would pass to that component. So it's kind of Reacty.
Yeah.
And you would use it somewhere in your site with something like this. And so this is the way I develop is I get into my happy spot when I've got the code on the left and the test on the right and my test runner at the bottom. Mm-hmm. So in a second, I'll run a test. Mm-hmm. And this is a test of the navbar. This is more of kind of an integration test than a unit test because it's just rendering the component, passing in some arguments, jamming it into a document. This is that Happy DOM thing, the fake browser.
Okay. Yeah.
And then doing an assertion to see if I got what I expected.
Okay.
I'm going to run all the tests. It's going to fire up that VTest server mode that I talked about, and then it's going to start watching.
Yeah.
And so I've got 130 tests. They ran pretty fast. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 3 seconds.
It's actually in the latest VTest, it's going to run a lot faster because it had to do this Chrome V8 VM startup teardown thread thing. But now it won't have to do that. That step right there will probably go down 70%. I'll just guessing. But here's the cool thing. Was that fast, Brett? Actually, watch this. I'm going to hit 2, and I'm not even going to save. In the IDE, you don't have to save because our IDEs have that virtual thingy with the file system.
Yeah.
I'll come over here, and I'll do something to mess up, let's see, nav. So I will change this. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this a div. Mm-hmm. And a lot of things use that nav bar. So it had to go find all of those things.
Dude.
But then when I put it back, I get some pretty fast feedback for that too.
Wow.
Now, if I was testing something that only had one heading, I got something weird going on here with this that I got to go fix. But I'll just go do the test for this. And I'm over here and I expect title 11 to test. Let me make sure that I've got my code fixed over here. All right. Okay, everything should be passing now. And over here, if I type 11, it failed pretty fast.
Yeah.
Over here, if I got rid of this, I guess because I've got a compiler failure.
Oh, yeah.
That's not happening. But part of this is just to show how fast it works. Now, the thing that I'd really, this is something in 2024 I really want to talk about and educate people about. I had someone from the VTest team on a WebStorm webinar, and I showed him this, and it kind of blew his mind about the possibilities of it. I'm running a test, and I'm running all my tests, but I'm actually running them a way that I don't really run them. I run everything under the debugger.
Okay. Yeah.
And why do I run everything under the debugger? Because if it's already running under the debugger,
you can,
then I can walk up and I can press space and I can stop execution on that line and poke around. This isn't about testing. This is about exploration. It's just so convenient. If I have a test and it's in debug mode, then as I'm coding, if I'm confused about what I'm being passed, it's like, what did you pass me? Oh, okay, that's what you passed me. My test didn't really, that's what you passed me. So what I'll do is I'll say, go ahead, and I'll remove that breakpoint.
Yeah.
And I'll say, well, what if I passed, X, Y, Z? TypeScript is telling me I've got the wrong thing. I was actually supposed to pass an object. And I've got my breakpoint. Now, when I go look, I see, well, that's what I was passed. Oh, crap. I'm not supposed to have an array of strings. I'm supposed to have an array of objects. Oh, that was my mistake. I don't have to stop and go to this other mode called the debugger. I'm already in the debugger.
Yeah.
I'm in a test. I'm in my IDE. Wow. I'm in the flow.
Yeah, there's little to say. I'm a little bit
from a PHP perspective, if you can work in units that compose into larger things, then your code is in a unit, and you got to testing that unit, and you're running under the debugger, and you put a breakpoint, and it's like, man, I am so under control. It's not go to the browser, reload what went wrong.
Well, I want to put this on my Christmas wish list now.
Yeah.
I think the main part that's missing here is like the Vite part that knows about all the code and is fast enough to actually be useful. Yeah. PHP doesn't have that.
Yeah. Even from a what can Python learn about this? What can PHP learn about this? If you are a full stack developer for PHP, and you have business value in the front end, in HTML and JavaScript, whatever, and you're thinking to yourself, maybe I should do better testing for it. You're right. The good news is there's amazing and interesting stuff that's really mature.
Yeah.
It's well integrated into PHP Storm. Yeah. Give it a try. And as a bonus, drop me a line in Mastodon or wherever you can find me, and I would love to help you get onboarded, any of you, about it.
Cool. Yeah, I'm still a little mind blown, but yeah, wow, there's so much. I'm going to, after we end this recording, I'm going to sit down and just think about PHP for a while, and then it will all be fine. But no, it's great. Thanks you so much for showing me this, Paul. It's super inspiring. And just like last week, you showed some things in Python, right? It's so good to learn from other languages. And yeah, I'm so happy that we were able to do that. If you're watching and you have some thoughts about this as well, leave those thoughts in the comments, and Paul can read them as well, and you can be there to answer them as well. I'll send you some links, Paul, if I need you.
Yep.
Yeah, just share your thoughts as well. Would be super cool to hear from the PHP community how they feel about all of this, and where you think there's room for PHP to grow on one hand, but also where there's room for PHP developers to start embracing these tools. Because like you said, Paul, we're all a little bit doing front-end development as well, and we need this. So yeah, cool. Thank you for being here, Paul.
Thanks for having me. I'm learning a lot from what you're doing in PHP, and hopefully I hang around a little bit. You and I keep talking about these things.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, see you next time. Bye-bye.